Hey, welcome to Restoration. My name is Matt. So glad you could join us on this Shabbat or whatever day you're watching this message. We're glad you're hanging with us as we continue our series, Blood Brothers, the story of the sons of Jacob. And as we've been going through this series, we're treating Genesis 37 through 50 as ancient meditative literature. That's why we're taking our time with the story. We're letting it marinate over a long period. And 17 sermons in, we're only about halfway through the chapters. So today's message is part 17 of the series, and it's called The Snake's Cup. And if you're just joining us in this series, we encourage you to go back and watch the other messages. But I want to catch you up. Joseph was his father's favorite, and he was betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery at age 17. And the brothers told their father that he was dead. 22 years later, Joseph is now the second most powerful man in Egypt, and there's a famine, and his brothers come to buy grain. They don't recognize him, but Joseph recognizes them. He's been testing them, hiding their money in their bags, demanding that they bring Benjamin, watching to see if they've changed. And last week, they passed their test at the dinner table at Joseph's house. But Joseph isn't done. He's still testing. He's still hiding. He's still responding from trauma instead of from God's presence. And so last week we left Joseph's house, and the brothers had done everything right. And they brought back the silver. They brought Benjamin. They passed all of Joseph's tests. And there was no jealousy when Benjamin was given 5 times the food than everyone else. And Joseph's still hiding. He's still behind walls. He's still seeing his brothers frozen in time. So we talked about what it means to be really present with God and how it unfreezes your vision. You see yourself differently. You see others differently. You're able to respond to traumatic situations differently. But Joseph hasn't experienced that yet. So this week, Joseph's plan of revenge continues in chapter 44, verse 1. Then he commanded the one over his household, saying, "Fill the men's sacks with as much money as they are able to carry, and put money in the opening of each man's sack." Well, here we go again. Joseph not only gives them grain, but he puts the money they paid for the grain in their bags again. And then, verse 2, "And put my cup, the silver cup, in the opening of the sack of the youngest, along with his grain money." So he did as Joseph told him. Now Joseph's doing this to bait the 10 brothers into betraying Benjamin by adding his silver cup to the money in Benjamin's bag. He sends them on their way, and they leave. And in verse 4, it says, the brothers left the city, and they did not get far. When Joseph said to the one over his household, "Get up, go after them, and when you catch up to them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid evil for good?'" That's Ra and Tov, bad for good, all the way back to the Garden of Eden. Verse 5, "Isn't this the one from which my Lord drinks?" He even especially uses it to discern by divination. What you've done is Ra, is bad. And you have to listen to the brilliant wordplay of the author of Genesis here. In Hebrew, these two words, which are discern and divination, in Hebrew, it sounds like the same word twice. It's nachesh yinachesh. But they're actually two different words from different roots that sound identical. Nachash is divination, fortune telling, seeking hidden knowledge. But Nachash also means snake or serpent. It's the same sound, different root, different meaning. But the narrator is playing with your ears. You hear snake, snake, and divination, divination at the same time in Hebrew. And Joseph is using a cup of divination, but he's using it like a snake wrapped around deception, just like in the Garden of Eden. The serpent took something Tov, good, the tree of knowledge, and twisted it with lies. Did God really say? Deception wrapped around truth. And so Joseph is doing the same thing. He's using the language of divination, snake words, to set a trap and be deceptive like a snake. And it's important because we know from the earlier stories in Genesis that Joseph learned how to do this by watching his family. Specifically, there's a story in Genesis 31 where Jacob leaves his father-in-law Laban with his family and all of his possessions in secret at night. And Rachel, his beloved wife, steals her father's household idols and hides them. Laban chases them down. He accuses Jacob of stealing, but Jacob doesn't even know, to the point where he says, look, search everything. Whoever has your gods will die. And Laban searches tent by tent while Joseph watches. Now, Joseph would probably be about 6 years old when this happened. And now as an adult, decades later, Joseph is actually using the same script as his mother. So you watch how Genesis 31 and Genesis 44 mirror each other. This chart is made by Tim Mackey for the free class on Joseph from the Bible Project, and it lays out the parallels side by side so you can see what Joseph saw and what Joseph is doing. There are 6 points of comparison between Genesis 44 and Genesis chapter 30 and 31. The first is someone is chased and overtaken by the one chasing. The second are the terms tov and ra. Why have you repaid good with evil in Genesis 44? But in Genesis 31, Laban said, be careful that you don't speak to Jacob about tov or ra. The third is Joseph and Laban both lie about divination. Joseph says, doesn't the divination happen with this cup? And Laban says to Jacob in Genesis 30, I have learned information by divination that the Lord has blessed me on account of you. The fourth connection is there are items that are hidden in saddlebags, the cup and the idols. Joseph hides the cup in the saddlebag of Benjamin, and Rachel hides her father's idols in the saddlebag of her camel. And there's a search in both stories, and the search happens from the oldest to the youngest. In Genesis 31, Laban searches through the tent for his idols, starting with the oldest and ending with Rachel, the youngest. It's the same order for the brothers in their bags that are searched in Genesis 44. The sixth connection is deception is seen and understood as bad. Genesis 44:5 says, you have done a bad thing by doing this. Genesis 31:26, Laban says, why have you done this by deceiving me? You have to see that word for word in places. There are these 6 connections between what Rachel does in stealing her father's idol and what Joseph does in hiding his cup to deceive his brothers. In Genesis 31, she stole the idols and got away with it. In Genesis 44, nothing is actually stolen because Joseph put it there, but Benjamin gets caught. See, Joseph watched his mother escape through deception when he was 6. Now as an adult, he's using the same script, but inverted. He deceived in order to steal his brother, Benjamin, and keep him. You have to see what Joseph is doing. This cup serves 2 purposes. It's a trap to catch Benjamin, and it's a cover story to explain how this Egyptian vizier seems to know so much about these brothers in this family. And the steward does as instructed. He chases after them. And in verse 6, he says, so he caught up to them and spoke these words to him, the words that Joseph instructed him to speak. The steward accuses the brothers with the word Joseph told him to say. Why have you repaid tov with ra? Why did you steal my master's cup? And the brothers, they're horrified. Verse 7, it says, they said to him, why does my Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing as this. Verse 8, look, we found the money. They're saying to this guy, we've already had this conversation in the vizier's house. We found the money in our bags. We brought it back to you from the land of Canaan. What? And then we brought double to pay for more grain. Why would we steal silver and gold from your Lord's house now? This is the same steward who said to them, oh, last time I did receive your money. Why would they steal now? After all of that conversation, after they've done everything right, after they've only told the truth, after they've made restitution, they're being honest. And then they say, well, look, whoever among your servants is found with it, let him die. And we will also be my Lord's slave. They're so confident that nobody has stolen it because they didn't. They say, well, whoever has it, then kill him. It's the same oath that Jacob made to Laban in Genesis 31. Anyone with whom you find your God shall die. Rachel should have died for stealing the idols, but she didn't. She deceived her father, her husband, her whole family, and got away with it. But now, in Genesis 44, the steward flips the script. He says, well, how about even now, let it be according to your words. The one with whom it is found shall be my slave, but the rest of you shall be innocent. Well, that's not what they said. The brother said, whoever has it will die, and the rest of us will become slaves. The steward says, yeah, I agree. The one who has it will become my slave. The rest of you will go free. He gives the 10 brothers the option to betray Benjamin and leave. It's the same option they took 22 years ago when they left their brother Joseph, sold him for slavery, and went back to their father and lied. Verse 11, then each man quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack to check, and they searched from beginning with the eldest and finishing with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Interesting that it's oldest to youngest, like Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, all the way to Benjamin last. Just like Joseph watched Laban search the family tents when he was 6. Leah's tent, her sons. The maidservant's tent, their sons. Rachel's tent last, her 2 sons. See, both searches in Genesis 31 and Genesis 44 are connected to Rachel. In Genesis 31, the search ends with Rachel herself, but in Genesis 44, the search ends with her youngest son, Benjamin. Same structure, same suspense. Benjamin, the son Rachel died giving birth to. And the family would always wonder, maybe there's a connection between what she did and her death. And Jacob swore, anyone who finds your gods with, they should die. But he didn't know Rachel had stolen them, and years later she dies. In childbirth, did Jacob's words have power? I mean, the text doesn't actually say, but I think it's something that all of the family members would have considered. So the brothers have swear, whoever has it, kill him, and we'll all be your slaves. They don't know that Joseph planted the cup. It's the same unknowing oath, the same fear, the same pattern is repeating. Rachel deceived and escaped. Joseph deceives and traps. Joseph is doing what his mother did, but he's making it worse. And here's what's happening beneath the surface. Tim Mackey says it this way: the children replay and intensify the failures of their parents in ways that twist and invert the original evil. Joseph doesn't consciously know that this is what he's doing. He thinks he's being wise. But this isn't just Joseph's pattern. This is the pattern through all of Genesis. This is about family inheritance. The real family inheritance is blessing through sacrifice. God called Abraham and made him a promise in Genesis 12 and verse 2. My heart's desire is to make you into a great nation, to bless you, and to make your name great so that you may be a blessing. And verse 3 ends with, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. But how does blessing come through this family? Sacrifice. It's a generational inheritance. Abraham offered Isaac. Jacob wrestled with God at Peniel. Tamar deceived Judah with the righteous purpose. Joseph, through slavery and prison and exile, there's suffering and sacrifice. But there's also a shadow side that gets passed down too. And the shadow side is the snake's cup. Jacob deceives his father to steal the blessing. Laban deceives Jacob on his wedding night. Rachel steals the idols with deception. Levi and Simeon deceive Shechem and slaughter the city. The brothers deceive their father about Joseph's death. And now Joseph deceives his brothers, planting evidence, creating a trap. Deception instead of truth. Control instead of surrender. Taking instead of giving. Two things can be true at the same time. The blessing is inherited, and the shadow gets passed down too. God works through all of it because he works through flawed human partners, and God is using Joseph's deception to bring reconciliation to this family. Joseph thinks he's controlling the outcome. He thinks if he manipulates them enough, he'll just get Benjamin. And Joseph doesn't think he's being manipulative. He thinks he's being wise, but he's using the snake's cup. Deception wrapped around a test. How often do we use deception and call it wisdom? How often do we manipulate circumstances and call it discernment? How often do we try to control outcomes and call it faith? The truth is, just like Joseph's family, we also learn that behavior from our families. We inherit it. We don't even see it. We're not even aware of what and why we do what we do. And it all goes back to the Garden of Eden. Watch what happens next in the story. In verse 13, it says, "Then they tore their clothing, and each one loaded up his donkey, and they returned to the city." That's the word shuv, the same word from 2 weeks ago. The steward gave them an out. "The rest of you are innocent. Go home." Joseph expected them to take that option, just like they left him 22 years ago. But the problem is they don't. Without being told, without being commanded, all 11 return together. The 10 tear their clothes. It's a sign of mourning, of grief, and of loss. The same thing their father did when he thought Joseph was dead. Now they're doing it because Benjamin is possibly going to be killed. They shuv, they return, all 11 together. And of course, this is not what Joseph planned. His trap has failed in one sense. His carefully constructed plan, the inverted replay of his mother's deception, didn't work. The brothers didn't leave Benjamin behind. They returned to Egypt instead of returning home with the money. But Joseph doesn't give up. Watch what he says when they come back in verse 15. "What's this deed you've done?" Joseph said to them. "Didn't you know that a man like me can discern by divination?" He's speaking through an interpreter still. And Joseph says it again in the Hebrew text. Nachash yinechesh. The same double snake language from verse 5. "That's how I know your birth order. That's how I know that my cup was stolen, because it's all divination." The snake's cup isn't just a trap. It's an explanation for everything Joseph knows about them that he shouldn't know. It's another layer of deception. And he's pretending the silver cup gives him knowledge, when really he knows them because they're his brothers. And what's crazy is Joseph is the one who actually receives dreams from God and interprets them. True revelation, divine insight. He's trading his true gift for a pagan prop. Real revelation for fake divination. God's dreams for a snake's cup. And Joseph doesn't know it yet, but his plan's about to fail. Not because it was weak, but because God is stronger than our plans and our patterns. Now, next week, Judah's going to step forward. He's learned his real inheritance, and he's going to act from it, and it's going to ruin Joseph's plan. And if you'll listen, I would like to share with you what your true inheritance is. Your true inheritance, like Joseph, is blessing through sacrifice, not control, not through deception. You can't control your way to healing. You can't deceive your way to reconciliation. You can't trap your way to wholeness. So, what do? You start by asking God to show you the pattern. Because You can't interrupt what you cannot see. You can pray something like, Holy Spirit, what script am I replaying? What did I learn growing up that I'm now using to control outcomes? Where am I using the deception? Where am I using deception and calling it wisdom? And then the hardest part is be honest with yourself. Don't try harder. Don't white knuckle it. Don't try to create a new control mechanism to fix the old ones. Just name the patterns that we've learned from our families. I learned to manipulate to feel safe. I learned to control because truth felt dangerous. I learned sarcasm because vulnerability is too scary. Allow the shadow inheritance to get interrupted by the blessing of God's real inheritance for you. Your true inheritance doesn't control, it trusts. It doesn't protect itself, it offers itself. It doesn't take, it gives. Lord, I pray for those watching who are struggling with the things we've talked about, Lord, that you would give us wisdom and insight into the patterns that rule our lives. Some that we didn't even create. They were created long before us and our families, and our patterns have persisted. Lord, would you reveal to us the way that patterns have persisted so that we can break those patterns and find our real inheritance. Blessing through sacrifice, not control through deception. We love you, Lord, and we're grateful that you hear our prayers and answer us. In Yeshua's name, amen. I love you guys, and see you next week.